Greetings officials, and welcome to our first training tape for the 2023-2024 school year. This is the first training tape for football for the 2023 season. This training tape will be done a little bit different than those in the past. If you've watched my videos in the past, you know that I typically go through topics of certain rules or types of plays. With this being the first training tape for the football season, we are going to mainly highlight points of emphasis and rule changes. So there will be a little bit more talking on video slides versus video in this training tape. But when we hit our second training tape after our non-conference games here in Wisconsin, we will be looking more at video and certain types of plays rather than wordage and verbiage in the rule book. So as we get going here, just a few disclaimers. Remember that this training tape is a product of the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance. The training does not reflect any instruction that's given by the WIAA or the NFHS. All of these training clips and tapes are meant to look at high school rules and mechanics in 5-person officiating crews. You might see clips from college games or high school games where you have more than 5 officials on the field, but no, everything goes back to 5-person. And then remember, we are never using any video or comment or any sort of type of play to degrade players, coaches, officials, or teams in any way. We're doing this purely for learning purposes only. And just to make sure that you have a way to contact me if you would like, my name is Cade Murray. I'm the designated officials training coordinator for the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance, and my contact email is right there if you would like to reach out to me. So like I said, we're first going to look at rule changes for this 2023 season. It's important to note that I'm going to look at some bigger rule changes that we have, and then we're going to look at some smaller rule changes that we have. We don't have much video with this because we don't have anything where certain types of plays are necessarily being changed or certain new boundaries or anything like that, like we had with the intentional grounding rule last year. But we do have a big change to penalty enforcement. And as I go through these, I'm not going to list off exactly what the NFHS says because you can read that and you can see the rule references that you have on here. But I'm going to give it to you in basically some dumbed down terms. So the purpose of this new rule change that we have is to eliminate excessive penalty enforcement when fouls are behind the line of scrimmage. So our change is that, as you can see there, basically states that as long as the ball is beyond where the foul occurs, and that foul happens behind the line of scrimmage, that foul is going to be enforced from the previous spot. So let's say we're on the 25-yard line, that's our line of scrimmage, and we're going long. If we have a foul for, say, holding at the 22-yard line, and the run ends at the 27-yard line, instead of enforcing that foul from the 22-yard line like years past, we now are going to enforce that from the 25-yard line. And then it's a very important note that fouls that occur in the end zone by the offense still result in a safety. So if we have the line of scrimmage at the 5-yard line going long and the offense holds in the backfield, that is still going to be a safety. We will not enforce that foul from the 5-yard line. And then our other kind of major rule change is that we had the exception to intentional grounding change. It's nothing major like last year, but basically what was happening is we had quarterbacks snapping the ball, tossing it to the halfback, and then the halfback throwing the ball out of bounds, which was by rule deemed legal based off of the verbiage given in the rule book last year. Well, that has now changed, and they have changed the wording to basically state that only the player who receives the snap is eligible for that intentional grounding exception. Now, don't be fooled by, say, a halfback going in motion and receiving the snap directly and then throwing the ball away. That is still legal because that halfback receives the snap directly. However, if the quarterback receives the snap, tosses to the halfback throws the ball away, still outside the free blocking zone, the ball gets past the line of scrimmage, it does not matter. They did not receive the snap, so therefore that should be intentional grounding. So we're just going to look at one play here related to our rule changes this year, and that's just to give you an idea of what we're looking at when we're talking about the new penalty enforcement. So as you can see, we see our down indicator. It's kind of right here on this line, and this is our line of scrimmage. It kind of extends out this way. You can kind of see where my jagged line is here, and it extends all the way out here. The player that we're going to be looking at specifically is going to be white number 6. So as this play develops, we see that play happens. White number 6 holds behind the line of scrimmage, and that flag is thrown. So remember, in years past, we would be enforcing that foul from about where the 20-yard line is right there. Now, since let's say the line of scrimmage is about the 17-yard line or so, we're now going to enforce that foul from the 17-yard line. It's important to note that if this play were to kind of push out more, let's say it ends at about the 10-yard line, right here, and this foul occurs, say, at about the 15-yard line, that is still going to be enforced from the 15-yard line. It's only those fouls that are behind the line of scrimmage where we are going to be enforcing that foul. So that's the key right there. The WIAA actually did a great job of putting some charts on their rules video, which I highly recommend taking pictures of, like I did, and looking at the different types of penalty enforcement. If you are a Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance member, you also had a quiz sent to you that highlighted different types of plays where you had to get the correct enforcement spot for holding and offensive fouls when we had them in various different spots on the field. So take a look at that. But that's our big rule change right there, is that we are looking at specifically those fouls behind the line of scrimmage. We no longer have to have second and 20s or second and like 30s and stuff like that. If we have fouls way behind, we now enforce them from the previous spot. It's also important to highlight our other rule changes that we have for this year. This first one especially could come up in many situations, especially when you're looking at things in October like Cancer Awareness Night. Towels no longer must be the same solid color for each player. So in the past, all players had to have the same colored towels in order for them all to be legal. Now, one player can have a pink towel, and then a white towel, and then a black towel. As long as they're one solid color, they're okay. Note, remember that they can't be ball colored or penalty flag colored. And you might think, why would anyone have a yellow or a brown colored towel? But the reasoning behind that is because if you are using, say, pink flags for in October Cancer Awareness Night, then players cannot use those pink towels. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. And then remember, we have added a new example to defenseless receivers. Basically, they also included a player intercepting the ball is now highlighted as a defenseless receiver. And then also the last kind of major one there is that the word intentional has been removed from the definition of pass interference. Not a huge one. Pass interference is still pass interference, but they just removed the word intentional out of there. Our second topic that we're going to look at here is the points of emphasis for the 2023 school year as defined by the NFHS. And you can see them right here on the screen. For the most part, they really don't encompass a ton that is actually happening on the field of play during live play. Our first one is one of those, however, and that is helping the runner. This is a play that you don't see called very often in high school. And honestly, in my opinion, at least from the games I've seen in Wisconsin, this hasn't been too big of an issue. However, in other parts of the nation, it is being an issue. And there are rules being changed at higher levels of football that are starting to be a little bit looser on helping the runner. But we have to remember our definition. It's really easy. It's Rule 9, Section 1, and it's an offensive player shall not push, pull, or lift the runner to assist his forward progress, and it's a 5-yard penalty. So those are your three terms when you're thinking of helping the runner: push, pull, and lift. And then the rule obviously needs to be enforced properly in order to get it out of the high school game. We will actually have a couple clips of this that you'll be able to take a look at and identify for yourself of helping the runner. Our second point of emphasis is the communication between coaches and officials. Just some tips in general for this. This can always be a tough battle, and we understand that we have emotion sometimes, coaches have emotion oftentimes more than officials, but we also need to kind of just always keep it a step down from if a coach gets a little bit fiery or gets a little passionate. Coaches care, and that's no excuse for bad behavior. But we always need to keep things in mind that if we can engage and use the proper tactics to calm coaches down and communicate with them, things are going to be much better off. My general 3 tips are, if there's going to be any communication with a coach, it's going to be through that designated sideline official. The referee should not be yelling over at the sideline. The umpire shouldn't be yelling over at the sideline. We certainly don't want line of scrimmage officials yelling across the field. We want to keep it to one sideline official. And this mainly prevents coaches from yelling at us across the field, say the referee, the umpire, the back judge. Always stay professional. Don't allow comments to become personal or derogatory. This is my key of thumb. Especially those of you who are teachers, this is an extension of the classroom. If a coach says something that they shouldn't say in a classroom, that needs to be addressed. There should be no reason that coaches are using language that wouldn't be used in a classroom normally. There are no reasons that coaches should be going after you as an official, like they would say talk to a student in a classroom or a colleague in a classroom. That needs to be consistently reminded as we go throughout the season. And if a coach does request communication with the referee, do if deemed appropriate, but keep the conversations on the sidelines. Keep the coaches on the sidelines. We've had coaches come out that I've seen in the past get to near the middle of the field, and then all the eyes are on us, right? When they're in the middle of the field, they're talking to officials. It's not a great look. If the referee does need to talk to the coach, have them come to the sideline. Do not bring them out to the middle of the field. Keep it on the sideline, and that way the eyes aren't nearly as much on you and the coach as they would be if they were in the middle of the field. And then our last point of emphasis that the NFHS has highlighted is game management. And this is kind of a general one. I think it's mainly geared towards athletic directors and game management. But just do your part in managing the game. And that means, arriving on time to the game site. Take the field far enough ahead of time. If you have a long walk to the field, leave 5 minutes earlier than you normally would, or 10 minutes earlier, or whatever. Make sure you always tell the coaches when you have the toss. This was a mistake that I personally made many times, and oftentimes we were looking to do the toss and one of the teams was not on the field. So always just tell the coach, hey, we're going to get the captains at this time, and then we're going to do the toss. It's extremely helpful in pregame. And then in game, just to eliminate problems early and efficiently. If you have players trash talking in the middle, umpire, referee, get in there and take care of that stuff. If you have players running to the opposite sideline, I always like to, as a referee, if I know that there's nothing left for me to really watch and I'm looking towards that sideline, I'm going to run in there. I'm going to help them out of there, especially when they're in, a quote-unquote hostile environment where things can be said, and you want to be able to catch those. So just some little tidbits. Like I said, not a whole lot that pertains to actual gameplay, but we can look at some clips right now of some helping the runner to help you better understand what we're looking for. Okay, so we're looking at helping the runner here specifically. I want us to pay attention to this player right here. Remember, definition of helping the runner is push, pulling, or lifting a player to aid his forward progress. And keep an eye on the quarterback right here as well. So I'll let this clip play out. And as you basically see, we have a 4th and short situation, and these are where you're going to see these the most. And notice right there how you see that player put his 2 hands on the offensive player's back and drive and push him forward. This should at least raise a red flag for helping the runner. Now, there are many things that you need to consider. We're looking specifically at one player clearly pushing another player's forward progress. So if you have, say, like a pile, and you always hear coaches say, push the pile, push the pile, push the pile. That's a little bit different of a situation when you have a lot of forces pushing back and forth and the ball's basically not going anywhere. But in this situation with the 4th and short, and the player is clearly pushing and giving that offensive player some momentum, this is something that we could consider helping the runner. And just to kind of further go on, here's another play. It's the same exact team that does it. Another 4th and short situation. Here's the player that we're looking at. Okay, the ball is going to be snapped, and then the player is going to push the quarterback right in the back there and push them into the end zone. We have to ask ourselves, it's possible in this situation where this running back pushing the quarterback is what gets them into the end zone. And in that case, we would almost deem that as helping the runner. So I consider these 2 plays to be helping the runner just based off of the advantage that is perceived to be gained. it's a very tough play to get right, and it's one where it's never going to be super obvious. So I would emphasize it early on. If you see an action like this where you see two hands on the back of a player and there's not much of an advantage gained necessarily, I would just communicate to the coach and the player, say, hey, that can be considered helping the runner. We want us to stay away from that. Again, proactive stuff, game management, things like that can really help us get these plays out of the game of football. So last but not least, we're going to be looking at some points of emphasis that the WOAA has kind of identified as needing to be addressed as we move forward with this 2023 season. And there are just a few things here. Simulation and the snap is a big one. We saw this a lot come on around the last third of the year and then teeter off just a little bit. But basically what we're trying to get at here is when quarterbacks they might throw their hands or do something to intentionally make the defense false start. So you can kind of read what I have there. We'll look at a clip that kind of identifies this and shows that this is really something that is truly gained for an advantage that we cannot allow in high school football. So here we go. We'll want to take a look at the quarterback right here, who I believe is this player in white. And we clearly have a situation where they may try and draw the defense offsides. So we see them line up here. The offensive players are getting set in the backfield, and they go, and he kind of throws his hands at the line of scrimmage, and the defense encroaches. Now, there are situations here where if this is part of the normal snap routine where he consistently throws his hands to get the ball, it needs to be addressed right away and say, hey, this might be a false start. If you keep this up, there's no motion associated with this action. It's clearly a act that is to get the defense offsides. So in this situation, we would want to call this a false start for simulation of the snap. It's a tricky one that you may not recognize right away, but it's something where you see it, you might want to talk to the quarterback and the coach, and then you go from there and make sure that it doesn't happen anymore. But something that you definitely want to keep your eye on, especially as the season starts up. Again, this was very popular in the last sort of third of the season. So we might see it again as the non-conference games start up in Wisconsin. So just something to keep our eyes on. Our next point of emphasis that the WOAA has identified is patient whistles. Staying patient with whistles is very key. We never want inadvertent whistles. We always want to see plays kind of develop out. In football, late whistles are highly encouraged, and especially encouraged by the WOAA. We want to make sure that our whistles don't come too early. We see the ball become dead, and when we think it's dead, we double check and make sure that it's dead. Especially in plays where you have like fumble, interception, fumble, incomplete passes. We really want to make sure that we are patient, we process the play, and then we make a decision. So let's take a look at just one play where this is very apparent and being patient actually really pays off. So we're going to see a run kind of come out to our right side. And if we watch to the very end, we'll see that the ball actually comes loose. It appears to almost be dead, and you'll see the cameraman actually goes through and they cut it out. They think that the ball is dead themselves. This is an excellent job by the sideline official of being patient, watching the play develop completely, and then making a ruling. It's so imperative that you are patient in the situation, because if you're not and you say rule them down, and it does end up being a loose ball, you basically take away a touchdown for the other team in the situation. It never hurts to beanbag the spot where you think the ball was down and then come back and have a conversation. That's the beauty about football, is that we can have conversation about plays after the fact. But this is overall just a good job by the line of scrimmage of staying patient, letting a play develop, and then ending up having it pay off by what I believe is a fumble and then return for a touchdown, where if you're not patient, you blow the stead and you take away 6 points for the other team. And the last point of emphasis that the WOAA is going to emphasize is just illegal hits on defenseless receivers, targeting, blindside hits, things like that. We're going to look at one play where targeting is definitely applicable, and then we'll wrap up here to finish off the first training tape for the 23-24 season. So on this play, we're basically going to follow the ball. The ball is going to get swung out right around here, right in front of the line of scrimmage official, and then we're going to have a defensive player from over here come out and try and make a play. So as we sit here and we watch the play sort of develop, these are situations where you just want to be aware of possible targeting or hits on defensive receivers. We can get into targeting criteria, helmet to helmet, launches, things like that. But it's just important that these are the types of plays that where defenseless receivers can come up at. So we see the ball get thrown there, and then we see a player kind of launch themselves a little bit and possibly target. So the halfback comes out, we see the play develop, and then we see that cornerback kind of coming up right around here to come and hit this player. An end zone view would almost be better, but as we watch the play kind of develop here, we just see that the hit comes almost helmet to helmet, and that it's just something we need to be aware of when it comes to possible targeting or hit on a defenseless player that's catching the ball. So just things to keep in mind. Nothing too detailed, but just a general reminder that football is a dangerous game, and if there are going to be illegal hits, we want to make sure that we get them so that they don't continue to happen as the game progresses. Okay, that will wrap up for the 2023 football training tape number 1 for officials. Thank you to our board members who have made this possible, the 3 football chairs for the 3 associations of the Alliance, Cameron Bump of the Indian Head, Brian Kenny of the Wisconsin River Officials Association, and Josh Gould of the Arrowhead Officials Association. These 3 associations have made this possible, and we thank them for their time and effort in allowing this to come out and to be given to all of you. And just some general reminders, playoff availability in Wisconsin is due on September 1st. Crew chiefs, make sure you fill that out. And rules test and video in Wisconsin are due on August 17th. We will see you in September for training tape number 2.